let's start with studio recording. The goal in the studio is to capture sound that will be recorded and then distributed for playback on a variety of systems. One key characteristic of working in a studio is that the studio environment provides more predictability than we'll see in the other areas of audio. In ideal situations, you'll be dealing with a low noise floor, an acoustically treated space, and often the ability to record things in separate rooms, one at a time, or to re-record when needed. This allows recording engineers to approach microphone selection and microphone placement with more freedom, prioritizing sound quality above all else. Because the studio workflow and environment is so flexible, many studios will have large microphone lockers containing all sorts of different mics, from omni to cardioid to figure eight, and from condenser to ribbon to moving coil dynamics. It's even feasible to use more delicate microphones in the studio that may not be suitable for a stage environment. One common mic that you'll find in almost every pro studio is the Sennheiser MD421, which has been a staple since the 1960s. Of course, studio work isn't without its own challenges. One challenge that comes up a lot is the challenge of managing leakage from other instruments and sound sources within the studio space. While recording things one at a time can be appropriate in some situations, getting a group of musicians together to perform a song is sometimes essential for certain styles of music. And when everything is in one space, engineers need to find ways to isolate things without ruining the tone of the instruments or ruining the comfort of the performers. Even if you are recording things one at a time, you may find yourself in a home studio with undesirable acoustical characteristics, which might lead you to wish you could isolate the instrument from the sound bouncing around the room. There are many ways studio engineers isolate sounds in the studio to capture what they want to capture while rejecting or blocking out what they don't want, including the use of gobos, or portable isolation walls that block sound, and microphone polar patterns. The polar pattern of a microphone describes where it is most sensitive and where it's least sensitive. For example, an omnidirectional microphone will pick up sound from all directions, while a bidirectional microphone will pick up sound best from the front and the rear, while rejecting sound from the sides. You'll also come across cardioid microphones, which pick up sound best from the front and sides, while rejecting sound from the rear. This is the Sennheiser E609, and it has a supercardioid polar pattern, meaning it mostly picks up sound from the front. This polar pattern could be useful in the studio setting, or in many settings, as you'll see throughout this video, as it can be used to isolate the sound from an instrument. For example, you could point the most sensitive side of the microphone toward the guitar amplifier, while placing the drum kit so that most of the sound from the cymbals reaches the mic where it's least sensitive. Compare that to an omnidirectional mic, and the supercardioid will provide a much cleaner guitar track in terms of isolation. One thing to keep in mind when placing microphones for isolation, though, is that while the gobo or the polar pattern of the microphone reduces the amount of leakage, they also change the sound. In the case of polar patterns, this is referred to as off-axis coloration. Notice that the polar pattern of this mic is different for different frequencies. This is the case with all directional mics, and it's something you should keep in mind. Some engineers prefer to embrace leakage between microphones so as to preserve a more natural relationship between the other microphone channels in the mix, but it's ultimately a case-by-case decision that engineers have to make in order to earn their status as an engineer. There's something else that's important to note about directional microphones. They're susceptible to the proximity effect. You'll notice that when you bring a supercardioid microphone or any directional microphone closer to the sound source, it will not only become louder, but the lower frequencies will be emphasized. This presents an opportunity to strategically place microphones, not only to achieve isolation, but also to shape the sound of the instrument. And in the studio, we've got a lot more freedom to create more distance between the instruments and the mics, especially when we're recording things in isolation. As you'll see in a moment, we aren't always afforded this opportunity because in other areas like live sound, for example, the cost of placing a microphone further from the source might outweigh the benefit. I want to quickly note that there are some microphones that offer switchable polar patterns, like the Sennheiser MK8. Multi-pattern mics like this operate using 2 cardioid capsules, one in the front and one in the rear. If only one cardioid is engaged, the microphone is a simple cardioid. If both capsules are engaged, you have an omnidirectional mic. If both are engaged but the polarity of one side is flipped relative to the other, you have a bidirectional mic. I've got a full video on this topic, but you can actually blend these combinations to achieve wide cardioid and supercardioid patterns as well. It's a really cool topic if you're interested in learning more.